My name is Troy, by the way. That's my pictures up there. I'm not quite certain what I think Dan stole one of my family photos, and then he snuck into youth group down there at the bottom and took a picture of us, and then I think I went to lunch with him and a couple people from church and took a picture, so that's the third one there. I am the Pathway Youth dude. I teach what we call the Nerd Herd, which is our youth group here at Pathway. I'm one of two teachers there. I've been going to this church since the beginning. I was at the very first service that Pathway had. We were at the Holiday Inn. Weirdly, Dan was talking about Esther. I remember that, and I don't know why I remember that, but I do. So if that's any inclination to my weird memory, I promise I won't give too many of those random facts. But I am unorthodox. I will start with that. I am probably not like anyone you've ever seen up here. The last time I came up on this stage, I tripped, and I fell, and I laid here for like 15 seconds. So admittedly, I thought about doing that again today, but I decided not to because I'm wearing the microphone today, and I didn't want to break it. I think Rick would probably punch me if I did that. So I decided I might as well walk calmly on, sit down. But I will tell you guys, there was a bit of discernment this morning that happened in which I was almost going to show up in a banana suit. So you guys are I don't know if you're lucky if that didn't happen or if you wanted that to happen. I mean, maybe we can make that happen next time. But I have been in this church for over 10 years since I was a little kid. And if you read the bulletin, I just read it actually. Dan put something in there that when I was 10 years old at one of the picnics, I came up to him and I said, Pastor Dan, I heard God call me that I wanted to be in ministry. I wanted to teach. I wanted to be a pastor like him and like my dad would eventually become. And it's been a long and wild ride, but this is my first one, so I'm sorry. First off, I'd like to apologize ahead of time. So one of the things that I wanted to do today was talk to you guys a little bit about what we do in youth group. So in the Nerd Herd, obviously, that was not my name for them, by the way. That was their name. We kind of asked them to come up with that. But this year was my first year to actually teach the whole thing. I have been one of the leaders, and I started about 6 years ago. I was just what I called the bouncer, where I was in the corner and I just shushed kids. Like that was how the Lord started his ministry within me, was just to show up and go, hey guys, just listen. That was me. And after a couple years of growth within me and learning a little bit more about myself and learning more about him and learning more about what I was passionate about and realizing that weirdly I'm a 25-year-old guy with no kids that has this insane heart for kids. And I didn't realize that I was stepping into my dad's shoes when I did that. But I got the opportunity to work here at the church, and now I'm one of the full-time youth leaders, and I love it. But Dan asked me to come up here and talk to you guys today, and I decided that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're talking about in youth group, what your kids are learning. And if you don't have any kids there, that's fine. You're going to learn some stuff today too, hopefully. And if not, I don't know why I'm here. But I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're speaking about in the Nerd Herd. And I'll also be talking to you guys like we're in youth group. So if I sound condescending at all, I promise I'm not trying to. But if I'm like, okay, guys, here's what we're going to talk. It's not meant to be like you guys are 7 or 10. That's just how I normally teach, so you're going to have to deal with that. I'm sorry. So one of the big focuses this year has been Proverbs. Proverbs. It's for 12-year-olds to 17. Anybody remember reading Proverbs the first time when you were 9? No, that didn't happen when you were 9 years old. 12, not really. If you read it, did you understand a lot of it? Right? Like running away from the hand of the fowler and all the good stuff. Like I didn't even know what a fowler was. I probably still don't know much about what a fowler is, to be honest with you. Like I don't know, is it a bird catcher? Does anybody know? Is that what it makes sense to me to be a fowler. And so I asked the kids this year, and I said, what do you guys want to learn about? I can very easily get a curricula going. I can get topical lessons. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. We can speak about Jesus. And I mean, ultimately in a youth group, I could probably ask 1,000 questions. The answer is Jesus. And then I can feel really good about myself because they keep saying Jesus' name over and over again and answering the same question. I could feel like, yeah, they're getting it, right? I didn't want to do that. I was praying to God and asking him, hey, I'm terrified. I'm petrified of these kids. I'm a 6'3" monster. You guys, I'm a 6'3" monster, okay? Like I'm a big guy. I'm not afraid to admit that. I've lost a lot of weight, but I'm still a big dude. I'm terrified of these kids. Like they're all running around. They have more energy than I do. They don't hit me or anything, but I feel like they might, Like you ever feel that? Like that guy's not going to hit me, but he could. He might. That's how I feel in youth group. And so I'm sitting there praying. I'm asking God just, Lord, I need you to show up. I need you to show up and teach me what you want to teach me. Tell me what you want to teach. And I kind of kept hearing this whole, why are you asking me? Why don't you go ask them? Why don't you go give them the opportunity to say, here's what we want to learn. You want these kids to love Jesus and be on fire for me, yet you're not willing to let them. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Well, maybe we should figure that one out. So I show up to youth group the next week and didn't have a topical lesson plan. I just said, guys, what do you want to learn? What book of the Bible do you want to study? Let's figure out what you guys want to hear about, because that's important. You guys are young kids, but you're learning. I want you to be children on fire for Jesus. And I can't do that by just showing up with a lesson you had nothing to do with. And so I asked for Bible books, and somebody says, Revelation. Okay, so everybody's laughing a little bit to themselves, like, oh no, what's this guy getting himself into? Yeah, I had the same thought. I'm like, nope, we're not doing Revelation. A, I don't know if I'm a good enough teacher to teach Revelation. B, let's get a little bit of a framework going before we jump into that thing, because they're going to talk to me about dragons coming out of the sea, and they're going to be like, this lamb showed up and then broke some seals. Was he talking about like the seal, like Navy SEAL, or what's going on, right? So I didn't want to do that, and I kind of called them out and said, let's not jump right into Revelation. That may be a bad idea. But then someone says, let's do John. I go, okay, I can dig on that. What else? Someone says, let's do Proverbs. And like, I got to tell you, my heart kind of jumped in a good way. I go, Proverbs, tell me why. And one of my kids just goes, it's about being wise. It's about being wise. And I'm like, I remember myself at that age. I never once said to a single soul, man, I can't wait till I'm wise. Super excited for it. You know, like I got high school going on. I got my first boyfriend or girlfriend. I'm really worried about looking cool and smelling good at school. And I'm really worried about wisdom. It's just like, huh? No, what? And so I'm like, okay, give me real reasons. Tell me. Well, I want to be wise. I want to know more. I read Proverbs and I don't understand it. And I'm like, you know what? I wish that I knew more adults that had that attitude. I wish I had more adults that go, this is intimidating. This is a scary part of the Bible that I don't know, but I want to learn it. I want to live this and I want to love this. And like my heart just soared. I was so excited. And so I said, okay, let's go through Proverbs. But let's not do a topical thing of Proverbs. Let's not do, hey, where can we find love in Proverbs? Where can we find the word wisdom in Proverbs, which I think is like 300 times, juxtaposed with the word falling? Where is it at? No, I want to go through and actually read Proverbs. And so we're a year into our Proverbs study now. Now, I'm going to say a number of how many chapters we've gone through, and you're going to judge me, okay? Don't, please. We've gone through 10 chapters in Proverbs in a year. Now, at first, when we went through that many and I was looking back at the year going, man, I really am excited about what we're doing, I realized that I was thinking of that wrong when I said we haven't really done a lot. We've done an enormous amount. 10 chapters in Proverbs for a group of 12 to 16-year-olds to understand and love this stuff, I'm pumped. I'm excited about that. And so one of our main missions in youth group is honest study. And so we don't just want to look at the Bible and go, okay, there's words in there I don't know. We'll leave those alone. Don't worry about those. We'll go past those. I want to break down context. I want to break down what this looks like culturally. What do these words mean to someone reading these Proverbs back then that it may not mean to me? For example, when we hear about like bread, right? Anybody feel like Wonder Bread is what keeps you alive? No? You can answer that, by the way. It's perfectly fine to say no or yes. It's okay. If Wonder Bread keeps you alive, you must make an amazing grilled cheese sandwich. But Wonder Bread does not keep me alive. I am not sustained by the bread that I eat. However, contextually, in the Middle East and in all of the area where the Bible kind of happened, bread is huge. Bread is enormous. Did you know that governments topple sometimes based off of the price of wheat? If the price of wheat goes too high and so many people can't eat, that's when reform comes. Because bread is so important. It's huge. And so when we read about bread in the Bible, we kind of go, yeah, man, I love me a PB&J. They didn't think that way. They didn't look at bread as something like, well, I eat that, that's toast. That's part of my pizza, right? That's not the good part, that's the part I throw away. No. Bread was huge to them. And so we learn that kind of stuff in youth group. And we break that kind of stuff down. It's incredible. We care about that. And one of the biggest things, other than our honest study that we've been learning about, is where is Jesus here? Do you guys ever read books in your Bible that are predominantly Old Testament books, and sometimes go, I feel like I haven't heard Jesus' name in a while. He must not be here. Hopefully nobody thinks that, right? Nobody thinks that just because Jesus' name isn't called out in an Old Testament book doesn't mean he's not there. But sometimes it's kind of hard to find him. He's not immediately in the text, so you got to break that down. And so you get stuck in a book like Proverbs that tells you all these ways to be a moral person, and all these ways to be a good person, and how to be wise, and how to be prudent, how to have equity, all these different things that's important to know. But if I don't have Jesus, what does that mean? Is it worth it to be wise without Christ? And that's an actual question. What do you guys think? Is it worth it to be a wise person but not have Christ? Is it worth it? No, absolutely not. No. Is it worth it to have great judgment without Jesus? No, absolutely not. No, those are tantamount things when it comes to Christ as our center. And so one of my biggest challenges this year has been to break that down and understand that. And so going through, I don't have a slide for you guys. I kind of wanted to teach this like I do youth group, and I don't really do slides for youth group. And so if you have your Bibles, this will be the first time that I say it, that you won't be able to read it up there. But luckily I'm loud enough and have a microphone, you'll be able to hear me read it. But if you have your Bibles and want to turn to Proverbs 1, I kind of want to read a couple of verses in Proverbs 1, specifically 1 through 7. I'll give you guys a second to get there if you're getting there. It's totally okay if you're not, by the way. You'll still hear me say it. All right. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So we automatically have a who wrote that. That's important, right? We know it's Solomon. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Oh, I love that verse, especially when I'm talking to a youth group, because they hear youth and they go, oh, I'm important here. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. And lastly, I love this verse. It's verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Oh man, that gets my blood pumping. I love that. So this first 7 verses are super important. What's happening is Solomon's giving an idea of why you want to read Proverbs, right? So who can tell me what a proverb is? What actually is a proverb? A simple definition. And I'm actually asking you guys, what's a simple definition of Proverbs? Wise saying. Perfect. Yes, exactly. That's the actual definition of Proverbs. So I don't know if you looked that up beforehand. He gets a gold star. Yeah, it's a wise saying, right? So that's what a proverb is. So like I said before, if I have Proverbs and I have wise sayings, are they really all that important without Jesus? No. No, they're not. And so my task this year has been to go through and understand Proverbs and learn this stuff and break this stuff down for the kids to understand, but still tie it into Jesus. That's an important thing to know. That's an important thing to do in any book of the Bible, right? It's important to tie it back to who Jesus is. Proverbs is full of wise sayings about being moral, about what to do in life, how to save money, all kinds of stuff. There's practical applications for so many different Proverbs, thousands of them. But without Jesus, none of it matters. None of it. And to kind of prove the concept of why wisdom is important but isn't that big of a deal, we're going to jump to 1 Corinthians 1. So if you want to jump with me, you can. If not, I'm going to read it to you also. So Corinthians, obviously, is Paul's letter to the church at Corinth, right? We know that. It's a rather large one. I think there's 16 chapters in 1 Corinthians. 13 or 16, sometimes I can't remember. 16, perfect, thank you. No, the kids have to do that too, so I appreciate that. When the kids have to go, you're wrong, dude, just you're fine. So I appreciate that. 16 chapters. Anybody in here ever written a letter that long? I haven't. I think I've written 2 letters in my life. But I'm a 25-year-old dude that's a child of the internet, so most of my life is on Facebook. So that's not me. Like, I didn't send a letter until like a year ago. I'm not even kidding. The first 24 years of my life, no letters. And then I ended up dating a girl from Madagascar, and then you kind of have to send letters. And so that's a long story. We won't go into that one. But it's a long letter. And so Paul is sending a letter. He was in Ephesus at the time in his 3-year mission. He's sending a letter to Corinth because they had questions and there was some stuff going on. In Corinth, in chapter 1, he obviously goes through, as every epistle goes, there's the greetings and the thanks and all the good stuff that epistles have, which is good stuff. And then he kind of immediately starts talking about there is like a rift in the church. There's some stuff going on to where people are calling upon different names like it's an identity. And so there's a couple different people in 1 Corinthians that are mentioned. Paul is mentioned, and then Apollos. You guys heard that name before? Apollos is mentioned. And then there's another one in there that I can never remember the third one, but Cephas. Cephas is called in there. And so the breakdown in the church is some people are saying, well, I follow Cephas. Well, I follow Apollos, and I follow Paul, and I follow Christ. And it's causing just this breakdown in the church. Like, people are trying to call upon different names other than Jesus to say that they're better than others. And so that's kind of the context of what's happening. But then Paul kind of starts talking a little bit about how unimportant it is based off of who you're following in that situation. It's more important to follow Jesus. And one of my favorite bits here, it's a bit long, and I'm sorry for that, but it's important, and I want to read through it. It's 1 Corinthians 18, all the way through 31, and I'll read it quickly, I promise. But Paul starts with, "For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since, in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demanded signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men." I love that. "And the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to the worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord." Now, that's a lot of verse, right? There's a lot to that. I can break that down a lot, but there's important things in there that I want to pull from. Does it feel like Paul's discrediting wisdom? No? Does it feel like he's talking about wisdom from the world as a subpar thing? Well, yeah. It feels as though Paul is calling these people who consider them wise, the Greeks who consider to have wisdom, and the Jews who consider to have wisdom in this situation, he's calling that for naught. He's saying that wisdom is the secondary thing here. The most important thing is Jesus. The most important thing in this is Christ and him crucified. Paul said that many times, that he doesn't bring wisdom, he brings Christ and him crucified when he goes. That's important. And so with that, with Paul kind of talking about wisdom as if it's not the most important thing, how are we supposed to interpret books like Proverbs? Books that are meant to be wise sayings. The very beginning 7 verses talk about wisdom being an important thing. It talks about wisdom being how you live a good life. It goes on. I think there's 4 or 5, actually maybe 7 chapters in the first 10 chapters that are all about Solomon's call to wisdom. And it's framed in the perspective of a father speaking to a son. Father speaking to a son saying, "Son, come, find wisdom. Find wisdom. Stay away from folly. Stay away from the woman that represents folly in this situation and stay away from her. Come to wisdom. Call to that." Solomon speaks about wisdom as though it's an incredibly important thing, which I don't think is untrue. I think it's important. Wisdom is important, but if we have wisdom without Jesus, we've missed it. We've missed it entirely. And that's kind of what Paul's talking about here is wisdom is important. It's important to be wise. It's important to be smart in certain things. Having the right words to say is a very good thing. And having the right words to use in certain situations is a very important thing. And for our kids, being wise children is important. Being prudent, having good judgment, that's very important. Would you rather your kids have good judgment? Well, I'd hope so. It'd be kind of weird if you said no, to be honest with you. But it's important. But again, if we look at that framed with 1 Corinthians, it's not the most important thing. And so over the last year, I've been trying to kind of hammer that into the kids, trying to get them to understand that thing, that moral children is not what we're after. Now, I know that may have hit you a little weird. It may seem odd. Morality within kids is an important thing. We want a 12-year-old to make moral decisions. We want a 17-year-old to be moral. We want them to know that going out into the world and right is different than wrong, and stealing is bad, and murder is an awful thing, right? We want them to understand that. But if they only understand that and they miss Jesus, I, as your youth leader, have failed. I have failed your kids. If I spend a year talking about Proverbs and talking about how important it is to be wise, yet we don't call back to Jesus, we failed. That's a problem for me. Now, I'm a competitive guy. I used to play football, if you can't tell, right? Like, hopefully, some of you are saying he better have played football. I kind of messed up my knees a couple years in and wasn't able to play for very long, but when I did, I was a monster. I don't remember a game that I played that I didn't take someone out of the game. Yeah, my dad taught me to be a teddy bear off the field and a grizzly bear on the field. That's what he used to tell me. I hit hard. I remember there was one time that I played that I hit a guy so hard he quit football. He said, I'm done. I hit him, I knocked him on the ground. He said, if there's any chance that I'm ever going to get hit by that again, I'm never playing this sport again. And of course, there was a chance he was going to get hit again because he was going to go against me in the next play. He got his pads, went to his parents, said, we're done here, and left. I'm not kidding you. I, as a 17 or 14-year-old kid, I was the happiest day of my life because I was like, man, I'm tough. I'm pretty sweet. And I say this because I'm competitive. I like to win. And I want to win with these kids. I want to be a success with these kids. More importantly, I'm framing that wrong. I want God to win with these kids. It's success for Christ that's important. Success for him is important, not for me. I don't care. I'll wear a banana suit and show up in weird clothes, and I'll trip onto the stage. I don't care. I don't look particularly nice all the time. I'm not the coolest guy in the world. I'm actually pretty dorky. I love nerdy stuff like Star Wars. I can quote way too much to you guys. I'm not about being cool, but with these kids, it's so important that I'm right here and that God is correct here. And so framing that piece within the perspective of, is Proverbs important? Yes, absolutely. It's incredibly important. Wisdom is important. We need it. And like Roger said, there's parts of Proverbs that say that in the beginning with God was wisdom. As a separate entity, wisdom was there with creation. God, with wisdom, made everything happen. And it's the same word. We're using the same word there when we're called to what we can have. Now, I'm not advocating for like we have the power of God and all the different stuff. No, he's got it. However, the fact that we can call upon that wisdom and learn from that is important. It's very important, especially those kids, learning about Proverbs, learning about how to be moral kids, how to be good, the proverbial good, right? It's important for them, but most importantly is to call that back to Jesus. And so the application here for you guys when it comes to what do I do with this? You know, it's good news. I'm glad that kids are learning stuff, but I'm not a kid. And I'm not in youth group. I mean, by the way, all of you are welcome at any point in time if you want to show up. I'll probably be dressed a lot less nicely. I will most likely be wearing a Star Wars shirt and or a banana suit. So come on into the Nerd Herd, say hi to us. But what's important to you? If you are reading books, Old Testament books, New Testament books, and you're focused on certain parts of it, right? Like you want to read Proverbs, you want to read Psalms for what they are, which Psalms do a great job of calling back to God. Some of them don't ever mention him. There's books in the Old Testament, like books of law and all the different stuff. If we're reading those books and trying to learn from them, but we're not trying to find Jesus, that's a problem. That's your application. If you're reading those books and you can't see Jesus' name, doesn't mean he's not there. I run into people, and I talk to a lot of different people, and I spend time learning from different people, and I try and teach as much as I can. God's kind of called me just to be the loud guy in most situations, and I don't know if that immediately qualifies to me be a teacher, but whatever. He's kind of made it so. But I run into people all the time that when they're reading through Old Testament books, whether it be in their weekly reading or they're doing a study with friends or they're doing something alongside like a small group that they're doing or something like that, they're reading these Old Testament books, and it's very important, the contents that's there. But when I ask them things like, well, how does this relate to kingdom? How does this relate to Jesus? And they have no idea. You'd be like 15 chapters into Leviticus or Deuteronomy, and I don't know where Jesus is at here. Does that mean he's not there? Does that mean there's not pieces there that call to him and call to kingdom work? Of course not. There's stuff there that does call to him. It's important pieces that we don't want to miss. And framing your learning and framing your education, your spiritual education when it comes to certain books where he's not immediately there, it is so important, even as adults, that we read those books and we figure out, asking ourselves constantly, where's Jesus here? And it seems like a simple question, but sometimes it's not a simple answer. It's really not. And for that, let's go to a proverb real quick. So let's do Proverbs 10, okay, 10:26. Nobody's got Bibles, that's okay. If someone has it, do you want to read it for me? Anybody? Yeah, we're teaching this like youth group. My youth group kids have to read sometimes. Can someone read 10:26 for me? I got someone reading it.
A lazy person affects the one he works for, like vinegar on the teeth or something.
Perfect. So I'll read that in my ESV. It's like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Now, I call that one out because A, I'm lazy. I'll be honest with you guys. Kind of part of this is to be open and honest. I'm lazy. Oh man, it's bad. I'm a procrastinator. I didn't write this till this morning. No, I'm kidding. I didn't actually do that. I've been working on this for a while. No, I'm lazy. I have issues with that. I procrastinate. I'm in college right now. Pulling myself off. I'm in college right now. I'm in a couple classes. I'm taking stats and I'm taking intro to ethics, which if you've never taken an ethics class, you should. It's a lot of fun. I procrastinate. I do. I don't do my homework until a day or two before, and it gets me in trouble every time. Sometimes I've written a 9-page paper the day it's due. Now, I'm not saying that to seem like, haha, you should be like that guy. No, I'm saying that as in go and do what I'm saying you should do, not what I actually do. Procrastination is an issue, okay? But reading a proverb like this, which Proverbs is full of them, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. What does that mean? I'm asking for a legitimate answer. Anybody got an answer? Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Yeah, being lazy. So a lazy person, what is that to people who send them? It's like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. It's annoying. It's an irritant. It's hurtful. Is Jesus in that verse? Do you hear his name? Did I say, and Jesus said, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him? No. Is it a call to righteousness for living in the kingdom? Yeah. Absolutely. One proverb taken completely out of context, which luckily for Proverbs, it's really not too much context. It's just, hey, pluck this out and let's chew on that for a bit. Let's analyze it. This is one of the ones we did with the kids. This is one of the ones we broke down, and I asked them, where's Jesus at? And so it's really easy to read this and not see Jesus for what it is. But when you look at it from the perspective of how do I live in the kingdom based off of this, living as a moral person without Jesus is pointless. But if you have Christ, you've got Jesus in your life, morality is one of those things that's kind of a byproduct, but it's still important to look at. And so like verses like this, we see, I don't have Jesus specifically in the verse. His name is not said, but like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him, right? That's a call to righteousness within the kingdom. Laziness within the kingdom is not good. We've got work to do, right? It's part of living in the kingdom. There's stuff to do daily. The kind of people that are just sitting there praying, oh man, God, I just need something to do. I have met them. Someone who's really living in the kingdom, I rarely see somebody go, man, I'm bored. I just got nothing to do, Jesus. I don't know if there's just I'm waiting for your calling to me specifically. I'm waiting for you to show up with a billboard or something. I need to see it in a license plate. I don't know. There's so much work to do. We cannot afford laziness. We can't. We cannot afford laziness when we are in battle daily, a spiritual battle for the kingdom of Christ. There are people that are less than a mile from where we are right now. Where we are standing learning about Jesus, there are people 500 yards that way, I guarantee it, or 500 yards that way that do not know him, that have no clue who he is. They've heard his name, but most likely in blasphemy. They've heard his name, but from someone that does not know who they're calling upon, and are willing to say, yes, I love Jesus, and then go off and be completely different. They don't know him at all. They need him. Billions of people need him. We cannot afford to be lazy in his kingdom. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Jesus' name is not in that verse, but he is certainly there. He is absolutely there, calling you and saying, you work in my kingdom. You are my son. You are my daughter. There is work to do. You cannot afford to be a sluggard because there is someone 500 feet from you that is in the battle of their life while you lay there lazy. They need me to survive. I want to be their water and their breath and their bread, yet you sit here lazy. How dare you? Now, I'm not saying that to you guys like, how dare you? I'm not calling you like that. I'll let Jesus do that. That's not me, okay? However, he is most certainly there. When we go through Proverbs, I promise you, laziness is a very common theme because Solomon does not have it. He will not take it. Wisdom is in there quite a bit, and it's usually juxtaposed with folly. And I kind of love that because when I read through Proverbs, most of the time when I see fool, I kind of just put Troy in there. Kind of keeps me humble. I need that sometimes. I need to read his word and go, all right, Troy, you're the fool. Remember that. Remember that. Don't ever take a proverb and say to yourself that you're the wise person. Just trust me, it's not a good choice. I've done it before the first couple times I read Proverbs, and I'm like, yeah, I got this down. And then I read more of the Bible and realized, I'm like, oh, that was the wrong attitude to have there. Probably shouldn't have been the one that was wise. I'm probably the fool. When we read books like Proverbs, we break this stuff down. Sometimes Jesus' name is not apparently there. Sometimes a call to kingdom is not apparently there, but I promise you, you can find it. I like to tell people that I think the Bible is 3 parts. I like to think that it's, hey, just wait. There's this Jesus guy coming. He's going to be pretty awesome. He's a Messiah. He's the Son of God. He is the living manifestation of wisdom. Oh, gives me shudders every time I say that. I love it. And then we've got this section where it's like, hey, this Jesus guy, he's here. He's here. This is what he's doing. These are the miracles he's performing. These are the people that he's healing. These are the people that he's talking to. He's on top of a hill talking to 5,000 people, and then he breaks bread 5,000 times, which is weird to me, but whatever. And he hands it out, and everybody's fed. That's a pretty sweet sandwich power Jesus has. Like, I don't know if it's that's what I call it anyway. Breaks it apart, gives you a fish sandwich. Like, that's sweet. Everybody got a fillet of fish that day. Right? This Jesus guy is here. And then you have the death of Jesus where he is here to be the perfect sacrifice for who we are. He is here as the perfect sacrifice. There are so many verses that lead up to him being exactly who he needed to be to where we can sit in this room today saved, set apart for him. Man, I love that. I love that identity. And then we've got this third part of, hey, this Jesus guy was here. This is how we live. This is what we do now. This is how we act within the kingdom. And so when I run into people that say, I'm just reading a book right now that I'm having difficulty finding Jesus, don't give up. He's there. I promise you. It's not going to be at first level. Taking a magnifying glass to it may be necessary, but I promise you he's there. I promise you there's something you can take, whether it's the history of God, which gives you an identity of who he is, which then allows you to take where your identity is. Oh man, that's a good feeling. When you know you're a son or daughter of the living God, that is amazing. That's absolutely amazing. We are where we are today because we exist in that identity. He's there. He is absolutely there. So to tie it back up, I want to read Proverbs 1 again. When I talked to the kids about this, the first 7 verses, I made this into a resume. I made it into a resume for them because there's a lot of fun adjectives in here, and I kind of talked when I was praying about adjectives to God, but these are adjectives that Solomon is saying we can give ourselves if we understand and dig on Proverbs. It's important stuff. I want to read it again for you. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Each one of those adjectives there can be placed on our resume. Anybody have that small section in their resume that's got like special skills? I know I do, right? And speaking is not one of them. But I was supposed to be, ha ha ha, no, whatever. I got it afterwards, but I think the joke kind of fails if, whatever. You got that special skills list, right? You've got your attributes, whether it be like I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I'm a team worker. I love working on a team, and I do very well under leadership, or I do very well in leadership, or I'm really great with money. I don't know, whatever yours is. Mine is I have a banana suit. Believe it or not, some places are like, that's awesome. Can you bring it? I'm like, yeah, let's do this. I told the kids, if they have a resume written, and they understand Proverbs, and I say this to you also, if you have a resume written, and Proverbs is one of the books that you're able to put under your belt that you've understood and put in the proper scope. Wise in instruction, wise dealing, righteousness, justice, and equity. To give prudence, having prudence, which is ultimately kind of like good judgment. Knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning. Obtain guidance, to understand. You offer all of those things as part of you. Do you think all of those pieces are important for the kingdom of God? I'd say so. So when we read a book like Proverbs, if we scope it correctly to where it is about living in the kingdom of Christ, living every day for Him and by Him, Proverbs then opens itself up to be so much more than wise sayings. It opens itself up to be so much more than just a list of moral values that you should have. It opens itself to be a tool book full of attributes and ways to pursue them for living in the kingdom of Christ and working in the kingdom of Christ. Man, I love that. I love that. That thought process that we have that just sitting right at our fingertips is amazing. I want your kids to be wise. I want the kids of this church to have prudence, to be moral. I want that. But if we are moral, if we are good, based off of the standards of this, without Jesus, we have failed. I don't want to fail. Personally, I don't want to fail. Lovingly, I don't want your kids to fail. I want the kids of this church to grow up knowing Jesus and living Him through Him and loving Him. So your application, again, go out. Find Jesus in the books that you're reading. Read Proverbs. Read Proverbs. When was the last time you read Proverbs? All of it. Yeah, it's a pretty long one, but there's good stuff in there. So I said I'm unorthodox, and I think I lived that out. Thank you. What questions do you guys have? Is there anything? I say that to my kids, and I rarely get questions. Sometimes I get like, hey man, where'd dinosaurs come from? Which I'm totally cool with digging through, by the way. Once a year we do a thing where, well, twice a year I have a notebook that I bring in, and when they're all super rowdy and just want to talk and yell and stuff like that, I call them gab sessions, first off, because everybody wants to talk about their mother's or their grandmother's cat. I don't know why. Just everyone is in love with cat stories. So that happens. So we do our gab session. But I hand around a notebook while that's happening, and I allow the kids to write down their questions. Complete anonymity. There's nothing wrong with asking a question that you might perceive as a stupid question, which I don't believe in. But I get questions like, why do angels exist? I get questions like, if God is only a couple thousand years old, where did dinosaurs come from? And we break all of that down. I have questions like, how do I talk to my parents about Jesus? Oh man, when I read that, I started crying. I'm gonna be honest with you. We've got kids in our youth group in this church that come to hear with friends that their parents do not know Jesus. And so they leave this building, they leave this house of God, and they go to a house that is divided. And they shine for him. They shine for him, and I am so in love with that. But they ask questions, and I love it. We go through twice a year, and I go through and I research, and I find all of the scripture that I can on all their questions. We talk about angels. We talk about why do demons exist, and if God is real, why is evil there? And if God is benevolent and loves us all, why did my parents die? Or why did my brother start doing drugs? Or why did this happen? And I tell you, when we start to frame that kind of stuff from the perspective of let's figure out what Jesus says, let's go through Proverbs and figure it out with God in scope and Jesus on our minds. Let's figure out how to live. So I don't really have a logical ending point, unfortunately. However, I'm not going to stand here and talk for the next 6 hours. Okay? So thank you for listening, for participating. I appreciate that. I love all of you. Let's pray real quick.